Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling more empty than when you entered? We live in a world where communication is faster than ever, where we are more connected than ever before. Yet, many of us feel more isolated, more misunderstood, and more distant from the people around us than ever before. Isn't it strange how, despite all the digital connections and constant communication, we still find ourselves craving something deeper, something real, something meaningful? And yet, so many of us continue to engage in the same hollow, surface-level exchanges day after day. Why? Why do we settle for the easy, the quick, the convenient, when what we truly need is something much more profound? In today's video, we're going to dive deep into a topic that might feel uncomfortable at first, but will ultimately change the way you view your conversations and your relationships. We'll explore why authentic communication is so rare and why we tend to shy away from those conversations that really matter, the ones that challenge us and help us grow. We'll also delve into the profound insights of one of the greatest thinkers of all time, Friedrich Nietzsche, and how his ideas on authenticity and vulnerability in communication can help us transform our interactions and ultimately our lives. By the end of this video, you'll understand why true connection only happens when we stop performing, stop pretending, and start speaking from a soul. If you've ever felt disconnected, misunderstood, or like your conversations don't really mean anything, this video is for you. But before we jump in, I want to remind you to hit the like button. Share this video with anyone you think might need to hear this message. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. If you enjoy what you see today, feel free to leave a super thanks. Your support helps keep this channel running and allows me to bring you even more thought-provoking content. So, let's get started. Have you ever stopped to think about the deeper power of the words we speak and how much they shape our lives? Let's dive into why most of our conversations are like empty calories and what we can do to change that. Have you ever left a conversation feeling emptier than when you entered? It's a strange feeling, right? Like you've just participated in a social exchange, said the right words, maybe even smiled, but somehow something feels off. There's a lingering sense that nothing of substance has actually been shared. You might have engaged in what many call small talk, those surface-level conversations that we all get caught up in every day. You know the ones? Asking about the weather, chatting about work, or the latest trending topic. On the surface, it seems harmless, even necessary in our fast-paced world. But when the conversation ends, you can't help but feel like you've just wasted precious time on something that didn't really matter. This phenomenon is so common, in fact, that it's become a social norm. We've all been there, caught in a conversation where we both know we're not really connecting, but we still go through the motions. It could be an interaction with a colleague in the break room, a casual greeting with an acquaintance, or even a conversation with a close friend. The words flow, but the connection? That's often missing. And the reason is simple. These types of conversations are shallow, and they're designed to stay that way. Nietzsche, the 19th century German philosopher, famously said, "The most lied about word in the world is, 'I'm fine when nothing is.'" This statement cuts right to the heart of why we engage in these hollow exchanges. It's not just about saying words. It's about maintaining appearances. Think about it. How often do you say, "I'm fine," or "everything's great," when in reality, you feel the exact opposite? It's almost like a reflex, a shield that keeps others at arm's length, preventing them from seeing the truth of what we're really going through. But even more profound is the idea that these interactions, the ones where we fake it, where we don't really listen to each other, and where we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable, serve a much larger social function. They allow us to exist in a world where we don't have to reveal anything too personal or challenging. They protect us from discomfort, but at the same time, they prevent us from making meaningful connections. This creates a struggle. On the one hand, we feel the societal pressure to engage in these conversations. After all, it's part of how we maintain relationships and fit into social circles. We ask, "How's it going?" because it's expected. We say, "Good. How about you?" because it's what we've been taught to do. But on the other hand, we know that something deeper is missing. There's an emptiness that comes from knowing that the words we just exchanged didn't mean anything. We're stuck in this paradox, where we feel compelled to participate in these surface-level conversations, but at the same time, they leave us unfulfilled, disconnected, and longing for something more real. Nietzsche understood this struggle deeply. He wasn't just critiquing a societal norm or offering a philosophical observation. He was challenging the very structure of our everyday interactions. Nietzsche believed that our time was too valuable to be spent on interactions that didn't contribute to our growth as human beings. He rejected the notion that it was enough to simply engage in polite conversation to fit in. For him, the empty exchange of words without substance was a betrayal of who we truly are, a way of hiding our authentic selves behind a mask of politeness. When we participate in these types of interactions, we may be socially accepted, but we're also hiding from the deeper truths about ourselves and others. Nietzsche's sharp observation about the emptiness of these polite lies offers a mirror to our modern social interactions, where many of us are still engaged in the same kind of mindless exchanges. Consider how this plays out in your daily life. How many times have you asked someone how they're doing, only to get a response that doesn't even begin to touch on their true emotional state? It's almost like the response is scripted, as though everyone involved knows the lines they're supposed to say, but no one dares to step outside of them. You ask, "How's it going?" They respond with, "Good. How about you?" You both know the answer isn't true, but neither of you pushes past the script to find out what's really going on. And yet, we continue to have these kinds of interactions, day after day, because it's easier than facing the discomfort of vulnerability. And that discomfort is exactly what Nietzsche was pointing to. He understood that true connection requires us to be real with one another, to move beyond the scripted exchanges and delve into the heart of what truly matters. But that kind of conversation requires courage. It requires us to let down our defenses, to stop pretending everything is okay when it isn't, and to open ourselves to the possibility of discomfort. Nietzsche didn't reject superficial conversations out of disdain for others. Rather, he saw them as a barrier that kept people from the deeper, more meaningful exchanges that could truly transform them. This is the tension we live with. We long for connection, but we settle for the safety of small talk. We want to be seen for who we truly are, but we're afraid to let go of the mask. And this is where Nietzsche's philosophy can offer us some insight. He wasn't advocating for a life of social isolation or rejection of others. Instead, he was calling for a life of authenticity, where we break free from the constraints of superficiality and start engaging in conversations that matter, conversations that challenge us, that require us to think critically, and that help us grow as individuals. As we go through our daily lives, it's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of trivial exchanges, but deep down, we all crave something more. We crave conversations that bring us closer to the truth, to each other, and to ourselves. Nietzsche's warning about the dangers of living in a world of polite lies is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that while social norms might encourage us to keep things light and easy, the real magic happens when we allow ourselves to dive into the uncomfortable, the messy, and the real. In the end, the struggle between engaging in these superficial conversations and wanting something more fulfilling is a universal one. We all face it, but perhaps the first step in overcoming it is to acknowledge the emptiness of these exchanges and to start looking for the deeper connections that can truly nourish us. The next time you find yourself in a conversation that feels hollow, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, is this really what I want from this interaction? And if not, maybe it's time to step away from the script and open up to something more meaningful. Friedrich Nietzsche had a profound understanding of human nature and the world around him, and his critique of superficiality in human interactions remains strikingly relevant today. In Nietzsche's view, the shallow conversations that most people engage in aren't simply harmless acts of politeness or social rituals. They're forms of self-deception, a way of masking the emptiness that we're often unwilling to confront. For Nietzsche, These trivial exchanges weren't just minor annoyances, they were symptomatic of a deeper problem with modern society. He saw these conversations as distractions, barriers to authentic self-expression and genuine connection. When Nietzsche wrote in 1879, "I am a master of these empty exchanges where mouths move but souls remain silent," he was not merely expressing frustration with small talk or the common pleasantries of daily life. He was acknowledging the stark reality that many people, particularly in his time, spent the majority of their interactions stuck in these vacuous exchanges. Nietzsche's sharp words point to a society where individuals have mastered the art of saying words without ever truly meaning them, of engaging in social rituals that require no real emotional or intellectual investment. For Nietzsche, this wasn't just a social faux pas, it was a moral failing, a betrayal of the self and the deeper truths that every person holds. To understand Nietzsche's perspective fully, we must recognize that his philosophy was centered around the idea that time is an invaluable commodity. In his eyes, every moment of our lives should be used meaningfully, an opportunity to grow, to explore the depths of our own being, and to engage with others in ways that expand our consciousness. For Nietzsche, any activity or conversation that didn't contribute to this personal growth was a waste of time. He was deeply concerned with the idea that people often squander precious moments of their lives on trivialities. Small talk, with its predictable patterns and lack of substance, was one of the most glaring examples of this. Nietzsche believed that we have a responsibility to make our time count, and that superficial interactions, those in which we speak without truly communicating, are a form of self-betrayal. By engaging in these empty exchanges, we deceive ourselves into thinking we're connecting with others when, in reality, we're only perpetuating a false sense of social harmony. We go through the motions of conversation, but never truly say anything of importance. The words are hollow, the gestures empty, and yet we feel the need to continue because it's socially expected. Nietzsche saw this as dangerous, a distraction from what truly matters: the pursuit of deeper truths, personal growth, and the exploration of meaningful relationships. Nietzsche's critique of superficiality isn't just an academic observation. It's a critique of the very fabric of society. In his time, European society was heavily structured around social conventions and outward displays of propriety. People were expected to engage in polite conversation, adhere to social norms, and maintain appearances. This culture of civility, while outwardly pleasing, masked a deeper sense of disconnection. People may have looked civil and well-mannered, but they were often hiding their true selves, pretending to be something they were not. Nietzsche observed this behavior and saw it for what it was: a barrier to authenticity and growth. When we constantly engage in these surface-level exchanges, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to have the kind of conversations that could truly challenge us, make us rethink our beliefs, or help us understand others on a deeper level. Take a moment to think about the times you've participated in such conversations, whether it's the meaningless chit-chat with a coworker, the brief exchanges at a social gathering, or even the polite, "How are you?" when you don't really want to know the answer. These interactions are so common that they've become almost invisible to us. We don't think about the fact that they don't actually serve us. They simply keep the wheels of social interaction turning. But for Nietzsche, these interactions represented a form of self-deception. By engaging in them, we tell ourselves that we're socially connected, that we are part of the world, that we are seen and heard. But in truth, we are not truly seen or heard at all. Our words may pass between us, but our souls remain silent, untouched by the conversation at hand. This idea of souls remaining silent is key to understanding Nietzsche's disdain for these trivial conversations. He wasn't just concerned with the lack of intellectual stimulation or emotional depth. He was concerned with the human cost of engaging in them. Each moment we spend engaged in meaningless conversation is a moment we can never get back, a moment that could have been used for something more profound, more transformative. Nietzsche believed that the true measure of a conversation or any interaction was its ability to move us, to inspire us, to force us to confront our beliefs and assumptions. Without this kind of engagement, he argued, we're simply going through the motions, following a script that doesn't allow us to grow or evolve. Consider how often we choose the comfortable, the predictable, the safe. It's easy to engage in small talk because it requires no vulnerability. It's easy to hide behind the surface-level questions and answers because it doesn't ask us to reveal anything true about ourselves. But Nietzsche would argue that in doing so, we deprive ourselves of something essential, an opportunity to connect with others on a level that transcends the surface. Without these deeper connections, our lives are poorer for it. We may be surrounded by people, but we're not really seen. We may speak to others, but we're not really heard. Nietzsche's philosophy insists that we don't have time to waste on these empty exchanges. Life is fleeting, and every moment is an opportunity to dive deeper, to understand more, to challenge ourselves and those around us. Why then would we settle for the trivial, for the shallow, when we have the potential for something so much more profound? Nietzsche's call to stop engaging in trivial conversations wasn't about rejecting society or retreating into isolation. It was about choosing authenticity over convenience, depth over surface, and truth over appearances. He understood that in a world that values social conformity, it's often easier to participate in these empty exchanges than to confront the discomfort of réel, meaningful dialogue. But he also knew that if we wanted to truly grow, to connect, and to live lives of purpose, we had to make a choice. We had to stop deceiving ourselves, stop pretending that small talk was enough, and start engaging in conversations that challenged us, that helped us evolve. This brings us to a crucial point in understanding Nietzsche's philosophy: the idea that time is too precious to waste. Nietzsche saw life as a brief and finite experience. For him, every moment spent on trivialities was a moment lost forever. He urged people to make the most of their time, to use it wisely, and to seek out experiences, whether intellectual, emotional, or spiritual, that would contribute to their personal growth. The idea of wasting time on superficial conversations was, in Nietzsche's eyes, one of the greatest tragedies of modern existence. It wasn't just about engaging in empty talk, it was about how those moments of meaningless exchange represented a failure to use our time for the things that truly mattered. Nietzsche's critique of superficiality challenges us to rethink the way we interact with others. It's easy to fall into the trap of social convention, to follow the script, to engage in polite pleasantries. But Nietzsche reminds us that every moment of our lives is valuable, and every conversation is an opportunity to engage with the world in a more meaningful way. By choosing authenticity over small talk, we can transform the way we relate to others and ultimately the way we relate to ourselves. In the modern age, we are more connected than ever before. With the rise of social media and the constant availability of digital communication, we can keep in touch with friends, family, and acquaintances no matter where they are in the world. Texting, calling, video chatting, tweeting, there's no shortage of ways to interact. We have access to information and connection at the tap of a finger. And yet, despite all these advancements, there's a growing sense of loneliness that pervades our society. This is one of the great paradoxes of our time. We are more connected, yet we are also more isolated than ever. It's a strange reality that seems almost contradictory. On one hand, we have the ability to reach out to anyone at any moment through a variety of platforms. We can share updates, post photos, and comment on the lives of others, all in real time. Social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat allow us to create networks, share experiences, and even build entire communities. But on the other hand, this constant connectivity has led many to feel more disconnected, more isolated, and more alone than ever before. This paradox becomes more apparent when we take a closer look at the nature of our interactions. While we might be talking to more people than ever, the conversations we have are often brief, shallow, and devoid of real emotional depth. We exchange likes and comments on social media posts, but how often do we truly connect with someone in a way that is meaningful? How many of our interactions involve sharing our true feelings, our struggles, or our dreams? More often than not, these conversations are reduced to a few words or a quick emoji symbol. Easy exchanges that don't require much effort or vulnerability. And therein lies the problem. These shallow exchanges, though they might seem harmless, foster a sense of loneliness that grows over time. They create the illusion of connection without ever truly offering the emotional closeness that we need as human beings. Think about the last time you scrolled through your social media feed. You might have seen dozens of posts, liked a few pictures, maybe even left a comment or two. But did any of those interactions leave you feeling truly seen, heard, or understood? Did any of them make you feel closer to the person you interacted with? Or did they simply contribute to the noise, the endless stream of images and words that never really go anywhere? This is where Nietzsche's critique of superficiality becomes incredibly relevant. He argued that society had become so enamored with appearances, with maintaining the surface-level connections, that it had lost the ability to engage in deep, meaningful exchanges. In Nietzsche's view, superficiality had not only become a cultural norm, but had also become something that people actively sought out. We've become so accustomed to these shallow interactions that we've forgotten how to have real conversations, those conversations that challenge us, that force us to think deeply, and that allow us to connect on a level that goes beyond the surface. In Nietzsche's time, this superficiality was evident in the way people engaged in polite society. Social interactions were governed by conventions, by a kind of etiquette that dictated what was acceptable to say and what wasn't. People adhered to these unwritten rules to avoid discomfort or conflict, but in doing so, they often avoided saying what they truly thought or felt. In modern society, this dynamic has only been amplified by the rise of social media and the digital age. On platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, we present carefully curated versions of ourselves, choosing only to share the parts of our lives that make us look good or appear successful. We post about our achievements, our vacations, our favorite meals, everything that fits the idealized version of who we want the world to think we are. But these portrayals are often far removed from the complexity of our true selves. They don't capture our struggles, our doubts, or our vulnerabilities. This constant curation of our lives online leads to a kind of disconnection. We might have hundreds or even thousands of friends and followers, but how many of those people truly know us? How many of them are aware of our fears, our pain, or our aspirations? Social media provides a platform for interaction, but it doesn't foster the kind of meaningful exchanges that build genuine connection. Instead, it encourages us to engage in a kind of performative communication, where the goal isn't to truly connect, but to maintain an image, to keep up with the social current, and to avoid any kind of vulnerability. Nietzsche would argue that this kind of interaction is not only unsatisfying, but ultimately damaging. He believed that superficiality, when it becomes a cultural norm, prevents us from engaging in the kind of conversations that can truly transform us. We get caught up in the cycle of shallow exchanges, commenting on someone's post, sending a quick text, liking a photo. We often don't have the courage or the time to delve into the topics that could truly challenge us or help us grow. It's not just the rise of social media that exacerbates this issue. The pace of modern life itself contributes to this culture of superficiality. People are busier than ever, constantly on the go, juggling work, family, and personal obligations. In such an environment, it's easy to default to quick, easy exchanges that don't require much effort or emotional investment. It's easier to send a text or post an update than to sit down and have a meaningful conversation with someone. But this constant rush to move from one thing to the next means that we often miss out on the deeper connections that make life meaningful. The result of all this is a growing sense of loneliness. Despite being surrounded by digital connections, many people find themselves feeling more isolated than ever before. It's a loneliness that comes not from a lack of interaction, but from the lack of true connection. We may be constantly communicating, but we're not truly communicating in ways that matter. We may have hundreds of friends on social media, but we rarely open up to them about our real thoughts, struggles, or experiences. We may engage in small talk at work, at parties, and in social gatherings. But how often do those conversations go beyond the surface? Nietzsche's argument here is critical. The widespread acceptance of superficiality as a social norm has led to a situation where people no longer know how to engage in deep, meaningful exchanges. This is not just a matter of individual preference. It's a societal issue. As a culture, we have become so accustomed to shallow interactions that we no longer see the value in seeking out more substantial conversations. In this sense, the modern age has created a vicious cycle. While we may be more connected than ever before, those connections are often empty, leaving us longing for something more real. At the core of Nietzsche's critique is the idea that superficial conversations don't allow us to engage with the world in a way that fosters growth. We need to be challenged, to be questioned, and to engage with others on a level that goes beyond the mundane. But this can't happen if we're stuck in a routine of small talk, exchanging pleasantries instead of exploring the things that truly matter. In this way, the very technology that was meant to connect us has, in some respects, made us more distant from one another, leaving us to navigate a world of connections that lack the depth we need to feel truly seen and understood. To break free from this paradox, we must learn to reject the cultural norm of superficiality. We must have the courage to go beyond small talk, to ask the hard questions, and to seek out the conversations that challenge us. We must be willing to move beyond the comfortable surface and into the depths of human experience, where true connection lies. Only then can we begin to bridge the gap between our digital interactions and the meaningful, transformative conversations that make us feel truly alive. Meaningful, deep conversations are a cornerstone of human connection, and yet, in today's world, they seem to be in short supply. Despite the technological advances that have connected us in unprecedented ways, we often find ourselves stuck in the shallow end of social interactions. We talk about the weather, we discuss our workday, we comment on a friend's latest social media post, but how often do we really connect with someone on a deep, personal level? Deep conversations are the ones that reveal who we truly are, the ones that make us feel seen, understood, and validated. They are the interactions that challenge us, push us to think critically, and help us grow as individuals. These conversations are essential for developing strong emotional connections with others, yet they are often avoided in favor of lighter, less challenging exchanges. The importance of deep conversations cannot be overstated. Human beings are inherently social creatures, and our need for meaningful connections is hardwired into us. We thrive on interactions that go beyond superficial pleasantries. These are the conversations that allow us to understand the complexities of others and to be understood in turn. When we engage in deep discussions, we open ourselves up to vulnerability, empathy, and understanding. We share our experiences, our fears, our hopes, and our dreams, and in doing so, we create bonds that are far more powerful than the fleeting connections we make through small talk. Research supports what Nietzsche instinctively understood, that deep conversations are critical for our mental and emotional well-being. Studies have shown that engaging in meaningful conversations is linked to higher levels of happiness, emotional connection, and overall life satisfaction. One study conducted by the University of Chicago found that people who engage in deep, substantive conversations report higher levels of emotional well-being than those who primarily engage in small talk. The research found that conversations that involve self-disclosure, mutual understanding, and emotional engagement were strongly associated with greater feelings of closeness and connection. Conversely, shallow conversations, those that revolve around trivial topics like the weather or the latest viral trend, often lead to a sense of emptiness. While these interactions might seem harmless, They can foster a sense of isolation and loneliness. Studies have shown that engaging in superficial exchanges, especially when they become the primary form of communication, can lead to higher levels of social anxiety and emotional exhaustion. It's easy to get caught up in the cycle of small talk, but when it's the only form of interaction we have, it leaves us feeling disconnected from others. The discomfort of shallow conversations often stems from the fact that they lack the emotional depth that we, as human beings, crave. It's not that we don't want to talk to others, but we long for more meaningful interactions that offer real insight into the lives of those around us and into our own lives as well. This disconnect between the type of communication we engage in and the emotional connection we seek is a fundamental issue of modern life. As we spend more time communicating through digital platforms, the challenge of fostering deep conversations only becomes more pronounced. Social media and texting, while convenient, often prioritize brevity and speed over depth and thoughtfulness. A quick comment or a like on a post might feel like an interaction, but it doesn't provide the emotional depth that comes with a face-to-face conversation or a phone call that delves into deeper topics. The result is a society that is more connected than ever, but still deeply disconnected at the level of authentic human interaction. So why do we shy away from conversations that challenge us? Conversations that could lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves and others? Why is it so much easier to fall back on small talk, even when we know it doesn't satisfy our need for genuine connection? The answer lies, in part, in our discomfort with vulnerability. Deep conversations often require us to be vulnerable, to share parts of ourselves that we might not be ready to expose. It's much easier to talk about something neutral, like the weather, than it is to discuss something more personal, like our fears, our dreams, or our inner struggles. Vulnerability can be intimidating. It forces us to confront our own insecurities, and it opens the door to the possibility of rejection or misunderstanding. So instead of embracing this vulnerability, we retreat into the safety of shallow exchanges, where the stakes feel lower and the risk of being hurt is minimized. Another reason we avoid deep conversations is that they can be uncomfortable. When we talk about meaningful topics, whether it's our values, our relationships, or our views on life, we often uncover areas of disagreement, discomfort, or uncertainty. These conversations force us to confront our differences and challenge our assumptions. This discomfort is a natural part of human growth, but it can also be difficult to face. We might worry about offending someone, about being judged, or about not having the right answers. In contrast, small talk allows us to avoid these difficult conversations. It's easy to discuss the latest TV show or the weather because those topics don't require us to dive into anything that feels too emotionally charged. However, avoiding deep conversations comes at a cost. When we consistently choose superficial exchanges over more meaningful interactions, we limit our ability to grow emotionally and intellectually. We miss the opportunity to understand others on a deeper level and to be understood ourselves. We also miss the chance to challenge our own beliefs and assumptions. The truth is that deep conversations often lead to personal transformation. They force us to examine our own lives, our choices, and our perspectives. They allow us to see the world through someone else's eyes, which broadens our understanding of humanity and deepens our empathy. Without these conversations, we stagnate, living in a shallow version of ourselves and failing to realize our full potential. Nietzsche recognized this long ago. He understood that meaningful conversation was one of the most powerful tools we have for personal and collective growth. For him, the ability to engage in deep, transformative conversations was not just a luxury, it was a necessity. Nietzsche believed that if we wanted to live fully, if we wanted to experience life in all its richness and complexity, we had to be willing to engage in the difficult, uncomfortable conversations that challenge us. We had to be willing to confront the truth, even if it was painful, and to open ourselves up to the transformative power of honest, authentic dialogue. In reflecting on why we often shy away from these deep conversations, it becomes clear that the barrier is not just external, it's internal. We have to be willing to take the first step and open ourselves up to vulnerability. We have to be willing to ask the difficult questions, to share our true selves, and to listen deeply to others. We have to resist the temptation to settle for shallow exchanges and instead seek out the conversations that can truly transform us. One of the most profound aspects of deep conversations is their ability to build trust. When we engage with someone on a meaningful level, we demonstrate that we value their thoughts and feelings. We show them that we're willing to listen, to be present, and to understand. This kind of connection fosters trust and intimacy, which are the foundation of strong, lasting relationships. Whether it's with a partner, a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger, deep conversations create a sense of closeness that cannot be achieved through small talk alone. The benefits of deep conversations extend beyond our personal relationships. They also have the potential to make us more empathetic, more open-minded, and more self-aware. In a world where people often feel isolated and disconnected, taking the time to engage in meaningful dialogue can be a powerful antidote to the loneliness and alienation that so many people experience. By embracing the challenge of deep conversations, we open the door to a richer, more fulfilling life, one where we are truly seen and heard, and where we can see and hear others in return. Ultimately, the importance of depth in conversations lies in its ability to foster true human connection. As Nietzsche understood, it is through these exchanges that we find meaning, purpose, and growth. By choosing depth over superficiality, we create the opportunity for transformative experiences that enrich our lives and our relationships. So, the next time you find yourself in a conversation, ask yourself, is this just small talk, or is it an opportunity to connect on a deeper level? Choose the latter, and you might just find that the conversations that challenge you are the ones that will shape you the most. Friedrich Nietzsche's rebellion against superficiality was not just a theoretical critique. It was a fundamental aspect of his life. Nietzsche didn't merely talk about rejecting shallow exchanges, he lived by it, challenging the societal norms of his time and refusing to waste his energy on trivial conversations. In a world that valued polite social conventions and pleasant, yet ultimately hollow, interactions, Nietzsche stood apart by rejecting the idea that time spent on such matters could ever be justified. He saw these superficial conversations not just as a waste of time, but as an impediment to genuine intellectual and emotional growth. Nietzsche, in his personal life, demonstrated his commitment to authenticity by often opting out of situations that didn't align with his values. One of the most telling anecdotes about Nietzsche's personal rejection of superficiality took place during a dinner gathering he attended in Europe. The group had gathered around the table for a social evening, engaging in what appeared to be harmless conversation, discussing the weather, a classic topic that everyone can talk about, but that leads to nowhere meaningful. As the conversation meandered in the predictable and shallow direction of weather patterns and small talk, Nietzsche became visibly agitated. He found the exchange to be both tiresome and ultimately useless, offering no intellectual challenge or emotional depth. In a moment that would have shocked many of his contemporaries, Nietzsche abruptly left the dinner party. It wasn't an act of rudeness or hostility, but rather an expression of his fundamental philosophy. Time was too precious to waste on empty conversations that didn't offer real value or personal transformation. His departure wasn't a tantrum. It was a deliberate act of rebellion against the culture of superficiality that dominated social interactions at the time. Nietzsche didn't simply criticize these practices, he actively distanced himself from them, refusing to be complicit in the societal expectation of conforming to shallow norms. This anecdote illustrates a key aspect of Nietzsche's personality and his intellectual stance. He was not someone who could simply sit through an evening of inane chatter without questioning its worth. For him, Engaging in such conversations was tantamount to betraying the higher ideals of human interaction, those that could challenge, transform, and elevate the soul. Nietzsche believed that every moment of life should be lived with purpose, and he saw superficiality as a dangerous force that distracted people from finding meaning and truth. His rejection of small talk wasn't a rejection of society itself, but rather a rejection of a way of engaging with the world that kept people from experiencing its deeper, more profound aspects. Nietzsche's decision to leave the dinner party reflects his commitment to authenticity. He refused to compromise on his values, even in situations where social pressure or etiquette might have demanded compliance. The social norms of the time dictated that one should engage in polite conversation, no matter how inconsequential, and Nietzsche's behavior stood in stark contrast to these expectations. His insistence on not participating in shallow interactions was a powerful statement. Life was too short, too precious, and too meaningful to be wasted on trivialities. His rejection of superficiality was not about being antisocial or arrogant. It was about aligning his actions with his belief in the necessity of depth in human interaction. This same spirit of rebellion is evident throughout Nietzsche's writings. He constantly challenged his readers to question the status quo and to resist the pull of societal conventions that limited intellectual and emotional growth. Nietzsche understood that people were often trapped in cycles of mediocrity, participating in repetitive, empty exchanges because that was what society expected of them. He saw through this facade and refused to perpetuate it. His life and work were a constant call to embrace authenticity, to confront uncomfortable truths, and to pursue the deeper questions that give life its true meaning. The contrast between shallow interactions and the richer, more fulfilling experiences of deep conversations is something that has been explored in many contexts throughout history. Nietzsche himself often spoke of the necessity of engaging in relationships that forced individuals to grow, to question, and to evolve. Deep conversations, according to Nietzsche, were not just a luxury for the intellectual elite, but a necessity for anyone who wanted to live an examined, meaningful life. They were the very substance of human connection. Nietzsche's own life was filled with examples of how he engaged with people who were willing to venture beyond the surface. Whether it was his friendships with intellectuals like Lou Salome and Richard Wagner, or his solitary moments of deep reflection, Nietzsche's life was a testament to the value of going beyond the superficial. One of the most powerful aspects of deep conversations is the sense of fulfillment they bring. People who engage in thoughtful, meaningful exchanges often describe feeling more connected, more alive, and more aware of the world around them. For example, consider the difference between a conversation about current events where everyone sticks to safe, politically correct opinions and a conversation where individuals truly open up about their beliefs, experiences, and vulnerabilities. In the former, the conversation might flow smoothly, but it leaves you feeling empty. In the latter, the conversation may challenge you, stir your emotions, and even make you rethink your assumptions, but when it ends, you walk away feeling richer for the experience, having gained something deeper from the exchange. A personal example of this can be seen in the context of friendships. Think about the conversations you have with close friends, those that go beyond casual pleasantries and delve into the emotional or philosophical. These are the conversations where you might share a deeply personal experience, talk about a moment that changed your life, or express a fear you've been carrying. In these moments, you are truly seen and heard, and the connection you share with the other person deepens. This type of interaction, one that challenges you to be vulnerable and open, is what Nietzsche would have considered a real human exchange. The act of sharing something deeply personal, of confronting uncomfortable truths about yourself and your life, brings a sense of fulfillment that shallow interactions simply cannot. There's a growing body of research that supports Nietzsche's views on the importance of deep conversations for our emotional and psychological well-being. Studies have shown that people who engage in more meaningful exchanges experience greater satisfaction in their relationships and feel more emotionally fulfilled. For instance, a study published by the University of Chicago found that deep, substantive conversations were linked to higher levels of emotional well-being and lower levels of loneliness. On the other hand, individuals who spent more time engaging in small talk reported feelings of isolation and emotional fatigue. The more meaningful the conversation, the greater the emotional connection and the more enriching the relationship. This dynamic is not just confined to relationships with others. Deep conversations also have a profound impact on how we relate to ourselves. They encourage self-reflection, self-awareness, and personal growth. When we engage in a conversation that forces us to think critically, to challenge our assumptions, or to confront our own vulnerabilities, we learn more about ourselves. This process of self-discovery is essential for developing a deeper understanding of who we are and what we want from life. Nietzsche's rebellion against superficiality was not just an intellectual exercise, it was a way of life. His rejection of hollow conversations was a direct challenge to the cultural norms of his time, which prioritized conformity and polite behavior over authentic engagement. Nietzsche's life and work encourage us to resist the pull of mediocrity, to reject the social norms that demand we engage in meaningless exchanges, and to embrace the conversations that challenge us to think more deeply, to feel more fully, and to live more authentically. By refusing to participate in superficial interactions, Nietzsche showed us that the true richness of life lies not in what we say, but in the depth with which we engage with each other and with ourselves. Conversations that reach beyond the surface are often those that challenge us the most. They are the conversations that force us to confront uncomfortable truths, challenge our beliefs, and confront aspects of ourselves that we might not want to acknowledge. But this very discomfort, the unease we feel when we engage in deeper conversations, is what makes them so powerful. Nietzsche understood this dynamic better than most. He argued that true conversations require vulnerability, the willingness to expose parts of ourselves that we often keep hidden. The courage to engage in these conversations is what allows us to break free from the shallow and superficial interactions that characterize much of our everyday communication. At its core, courageous conversation is about the willingness to face discomfort in order to reach deeper understanding. This type of conversation is not for the faint-hearted. It requires a level of emotional bravery and openness that many people shy away from. The fear of depth in conversation often stems from the fear of vulnerability, of opening ourselves up to the possibility of being judged, misunderstood, or rejected. In a world that often values politeness and surface-level exchanges, it can feel safer to avoid the tough conversations. We're taught from a young age to avoid conflict, to keep things light, to maintain the status quo. But Nietzsche believed that in order to live a meaningful, authentic life, we must move beyond these fears and be willing to embrace the depth that comes with vulnerability. Why do we fear depth in conversations? Part of it lies in the inherent discomfort of being vulnerable. Vulnerability means exposing parts of ourselves that are often hidden from view. It means letting go of the masks we wear, the personas we create to protect ourselves from the world. In a society that values strength, independence, and control, vulnerability is often seen as a weakness. But Nietzsche argued that it is precisely in our willingness to be vulnerable that we find our strength. The courage to be vulnerable allows us to engage with others on a deeper level, to connect on a human level, and to explore the complexities of our own inner lives. Take, for example, the fear we feel when discussing personal beliefs with others. Many people avoid deep conversations about their values or political views because they fear being judged or ridiculed. But when we engage in these discussions, we are often forced to confront our own biases, assumptions, and preconceived notions. These moments of confrontation can be uncomfortable, but there are also opportunities for growth. When we are challenged, we have the chance to reevaluate our beliefs, and reconsider our perspectives. This process can be uncomfortable and even painful at times, but it is also what leads to personal transformation. Nietzsche's own life was filled with these kinds of confrontations. He was not someone who shied away from difficult conversations or the uncomfortable truths that they often bring. Throughout his career, Nietzsche challenged not only the prevailing cultural and philosophical norms of his time, but also the conventional wisdom of his own intellectual circles. He was deeply committed to the idea of self-overcoming, of constantly challenging one's own beliefs and assumptions in order to grow. This commitment to challenging the self is what Nietzsche saw as essential to living an authentic life. He recognized that we can't grow if we're constantly comfortable, if we're never forced to confront our weaknesses or our limitations. Growth requires us to be vulnerable, to take risks, and to open ourselves up to discomfort. Think about a time when you've had a conversation that challenged your beliefs or made you question who you are. Perhaps it was a discussion with a close friend about politics or religion, or a conversation with a mentor about the direction your life was heading. These are the types of conversations that make us uncomfortable, that force us to examine our own assumptions and reevaluate our priorities. I recall a conversation I had with a close friend a few years ago. We were discussing our views on success and happiness, and I found myself confronted with the reality that my ideas about both had been shaped by external expectations rather than my own desires. It was a difficult conversation, one that forced me to confront how much of my life I had been living for others and not for myself. But it was also a conversation that led to a profound transformation. I began to reconsider my career path, my relationships, and the goals I'd set for myself. That moment of discomfort, that willingness to face an uncomfortable truth about myself, marked a turning point in my life. This is what Nietzsche was talking about when he emphasized the importance of vulnerability and courage in conversation. True conversations, the ones that truly challenge us and help us grow, are the ones that force us to face discomfort. These are the conversations that push us to confront our own beliefs, to question our assumptions, and to engage with the world in a way that allows us to transform. Nietzsche believed that in order to live authentically, we must be willing to engage in these difficult conversations. We must be willing to face the uncomfortable truths about ourselves, our relationships, and the world around us. But vulnerability in conversation doesn't just lead to personal transformation, it also leads to deeper, more meaningful connections with others. When we are willing to expose our true selves, to let go of our masks and pretenses, we invite others to do the same. Vulnerability creates a space for authenticity, for real connection. It's easy to hide behind small talk and pleasantries, but these interactions don't allow us to truly connect with others. It's only in moments of vulnerability, in conversations that explore the deeper aspects of life, that we form the connections that truly matter. In many ways, the fear of depth in conversation is a fear of intimacy. We fear what we might uncover about ourselves and others, and we fear the emotional risks that come with exposing our true selves. But the paradox is that it's only by embracing these risks that we form the strongest bonds. Authenticity and vulnerability are the foundations of trust. Without them, our relationships remain shallow and disconnected. By being courageous in our conversations, by embracing vulnerability and facing the uncomfortable truths that arise, we not only grow individually, but we also create the opportunity for real, lasting connections with others. Nietzsche's philosophy calls on us to live boldly, to engage with the world and others with the kind of courage that comes from embracing vulnerability. He knew that living a meaningful life required more than just avoiding discomfort. It required actively seeking it out, knowing that it is in those uncomfortable, transformative moments that we find true growth. Nietzsche himself lived this philosophy every day. His writings, filled with challenges to conventional thinking and provocative insights into the human condition, reflect a man who is constantly striving to engage with the world in a deeper, more meaningful way. He knew that in order to experience the fullness of life, we must confront the things that make us uncomfortable, and this includes the conversations that challenge our beliefs, our values, and our very sense of self. In the end, Nietzsche's idea of courageous conversation is not about seeking out conflict or disagreement for the sake of it. Rather, it's about embracing the discomfort that comes with true engagement. It's about seeking conversations that challenge us to grow, that ask us to confront our own beliefs and assumptions, and that invite us to connect with others on a deeper level. These conversations are not always easy, but they are the ones that lead to the greatest personal transformation. In a world where superficiality often reigns, embracing the courage to be vulnerable in conversation is one of the most powerful ways we can live authentically and form genuine, meaningful connections with others. In today's fast-paced, often impersonal world, the desire for authenticity in conversations is experiencing a revival. As technology has advanced and communication has become increasingly digital, many people have begun to feel the effects of living in a society that prioritizes convenience and efficiency over genuine human connection. Despite the ease of virtual conversations and the ability to communicate instantaneously across distances, there remains a deep longing for more meaningful, authentic exchanges. This desire for authenticity in conversation is no longer confined to the private realm of personal relationships, but is making its way into the corporate world, influencing organizational culture and redefining how we interact in professional settings. One of the most striking examples of this shift is in the way companies like Google and Microsoft are changing the way their employees communicate. Both of these tech giants have long been recognized as leaders in fostering innovative work environments, but in recent years, they have taken things a step further by integrating deeper, more authentic dialogues into their workplace culture. This shift is not just about encouraging employees to be more open or honest with each other. It's about creating spaces where vulnerability is not only accepted, but also embraced. These companies recognize that in order to foster creativity, innovation, and collaboration, it's essential to move beyond the superficial pleasantries and foster an environment where people can have real conversations about the work they're doing, their goals, and even their personal struggles. At Google, for example, the company has made a conscious effort to create a culture of openness and transparency. Google encourages employees to engage in conversations that go beyond small talk and surface-level interactions. They hold regular town hall meetings where employees can ask questions directly to leadership, discuss the direction of the company, and voice concerns or ideas for improvement. These meetings allow for a level of authenticity that is often missing in traditional corporate settings, where hierarchical structures can create barriers to honest communication. By fostering this openness, Google has not only created a more inclusive and collaborative work environment, but has also helped to break down the walls of fear and uncertainty that often exist between employees and management. Similarly, Microsoft has embraced a culture of authenticity by encouraging employees to bring their full selves to work. This includes having open discussions about mental health, work-life balance, and personal growth. Microsoft's leadership has openly discussed the importance of emotional well-being and has created a company culture that prioritizes support for mental health, encouraging employees to share their struggles and seek help when needed. This shift in perspective is particularly significant in an industry known for its demanding work hours and intense pressure. By promoting a culture of vulnerability and authenticity, Microsoft has created an environment where employees feel comfortable discussing personal issues that might otherwise be stigmatized in the workplace. This, in turn, fosters a sense of trust and camaraderie among colleagues, which has been shown to enhance both individual well-being and team performance. But the revival of authenticity in conversation is not limited to large corporations like Google and Microsoft. It is also taking root in smaller organizations, schools, and communities. In the past, work environments were often seen as places where personal matters were kept separate from professional responsibilities. Conversations were generally expected to remain polite, neutral, and free of emotional baggage. The idea of sharing personal thoughts, feelings, or struggles was often viewed as a weakness or a distraction from the task at hand. However, as more people have recognized the importance of mental health and emotional well-being, the value of authentic conversations has become more apparent. People are realizing that the more they allow themselves to be open and vulnerable in their communications, the more meaningful their relationships become, both in and outside of work. In addition to improving personal relationships, embracing authenticity has also been shown to enhance creativity and collaboration. When individuals feel free to express their true thoughts and ideas without fear of judgment, they are more likely to contribute innovative solutions to problems. Authentic conversations allow for the free flow of ideas, which is essential in industries that thrive on creativity and innovation. In work environments where employees are encouraged to engage in honest, open dialogue, there is often a greater sense of psychological safety. This safety enables people to take risks, share unconventional ideas, and challenge the status quo, which can lead to breakthroughs in product development, customer service, and other critical areas. For example, in creative fields like advertising, marketing, or design, authentic conversations are key to producing original and impactful work. When creative teams are allowed to have honest discussions about their ideas, their challenges, and their aspirations, they're more likely to come up with bold, innovative concepts that resonate with audiences. This openness fosters an environment of collaboration, where team members build on each other's ideas and push each other to think bigger and bolder. Without this sense of authenticity, ideas become constrained by fear or the desire to conform, stifling the potential for innovation. Moreover, embracing authenticity in communication can have a profound impact on mental well-being. In a world that often encourages people to wear masks and hide their true selves, the act of being authentic in conversation is a powerful antidote to feelings of isolation and disconnection. Research has shown that when people feel they can be themselves without fear of judgment, they experience greater levels of happiness, self-esteem, and life satisfaction. Being authentic allows individuals to connect with others on a deeper level, fostering a sense of belonging and community. This sense of connection, in turn, has been linked to reduced stress, improved mood, and better overall health. In many ways, the revival of authentic conversation in both personal and professional settings represents a shift in societal values. For too long, we have been conditioned to prioritize appearances, to focus on what we should say or do in order to fit in or to be perceived in a certain way. However, as more individuals and organizations recognize the power of authenticity, we are beginning to see a cultural shift toward deeper, more meaningful interactions. Whether it's in the workplace, at home, or in our social lives, people are craving real connections that go beyond the superficial. This desire for authenticity is not just about improving individual well-being. It's about creating environments where creativity can flourish, where innovation can thrive, and where meaningful relationships can be built. In embracing authenticity, we are not only improving the quality of our conversations, but also contributing to a larger societal movement toward more open, honest, and compassionate communication. It's clear that when people are encouraged to be themselves, both personally and professionally, everyone benefits. Companies that foster authentic conversations not only see improved morale and productivity, but they also create environments that attract the best talent individuals who value openness, honesty, and the opportunity to grow. The more we embrace authenticity in our conversations, the more we create a world where people can connect, innovate, and thrive, leading to greater satisfaction and fulfillment in both our personal and professional lives. True connection, as Friedrich Nietzsche emphasized, arises not from the surface level exchanges that so often dominate our conversations, but from the moments when we allow ourselves to speak from the soul. Nietzsche's philosophy was grounded in the belief that the deepest and most meaningful connections happen when we stop performing, stop adhering to societal scripts, and instead engage in conversations that truly reveal who we are. The act of speaking authentically, of sharing parts of ourselves that are often hidden, is where real transformation begins, not just for the individuals involved, but for the relationship itself. These are the conversations that challenge us, that allow us to grow, and that ultimately enrich our lives in ways that no amount of small talk can ever achieve. For Nietzsche, the superficiality that permeates so much of modern communication is a distraction, a barrier between individuals and the kind of intimate, transformative exchanges that can only happen when we choose to be vulnerable. He argued that the world often encourages us to perform, to put on a mask, and engage in polite, inconsequential chatter rather than delve into the raw, uncomfortable truths that connect us as human beings. But the irony is that these performances leave us feeling more isolated, more disconnected from each other and from ourselves. True connection, Nietzsche believed, comes when we break free from these societal expectations and start engaging in real, honest conversations. In our everyday interactions, we have the power to make this shift. Each conversation is an opportunity to move beyond the mundane, beyond the scripted lines that we recite out of habit, and instead explore something deeper. The key to unlocking this transformation lies in the questions we ask and the way we listen. Meaningful conversations don't happen by accident. They require intentionality and vulnerability. If we want to create space for real connection, we have to be willing to ask the kinds of questions that encourage deeper reflection, that go beyond the surface and touch on the core of who we are. It's not just about asking, "How are you?" It's about asking, "What's really going on with you?" Or, "What's something you've been thinking about that you haven't shared with anyone?" These are the questions that invite people to open up, to share the things that matter most to them. But asking these kinds of questions is only part of the equation. Listening with intention is equally important. So often, we find ourselves waiting for our turn to speak, eager to jump in with our own thoughts or opinions. But real listening is about more than just waiting for the conversation to come back to us. It's about truly hearing the other person, absorbing what they're saying, and allowing their words to sink in. When we listen with intention, we are not just hearing the surface-level response. We are engaging with the deeper emotions and experiences that the other person may be trying to communicate. This kind of listening requires patience and presence. It's about making space for the other person's story to unfold without rushing to offer solutions or judgments. Another powerful tool in cultivating meaningful conversation is the embrace of silence. In our fast-paced, information-driven world, silence can feel uncomfortable. We are often so accustomed to filling every gap in conversation with words that we forget the profound power of simply being present. Sometimes, silence isn't a void, it's a space for reflection, a moment for both people to process their thoughts and emotions. When we're willing to sit in silence with someone, we open up the possibility for deeper self-reflection and, in turn, for more meaningful communication. It's in these moments of quiet that we can uncover truths about ourselves and each other that might otherwise remain hidden. Silence is not an absence, it's an opportunity to truly listen, to digest, and to respond more thoughtfully. In our daily lives, we may be so accustomed to the rhythm of small talk and surface-level conversations that we forget how transformative it can be to ask a simple, thought-provoking question, to truly listen, or to embrace a quiet moment of reflection. But these moments are powerful. They have the ability to change not just the course of a conversation, but the trajectory of a relationship. By cultivating this deeper way of communicating, we allow ourselves to form stronger, more authentic connections with those around us, whether they're friends, family, coworkers, or even strangers. The benefits of engaging in transformative conversations are immense. Not only do they strengthen our relationships, but they also lead to greater personal growth. Conversations that challenge our assumptions, that push us to confront uncomfortable truths, or that invite us to explore new perspectives are the ones that ultimately help us grow as individuals. By engaging in these conversations, we open ourselves up to new ideas, new ways of thinking, and new ways of being. We become more self-aware, more empathetic, and more connected to others in ways that bring depth and meaning to our lives. Yet, in a world that often prioritizes speed and convenience, these deep, transformative conversations can be difficult to find. The demands of daily life, the constant buzz of digital communication, and the pressure to maintain a polished image can all stand in the way of genuine connection. But we have the power to change this. We can choose to seek out the conversations that matter, to ask the questions that encourage depth, to listen with intention, and to embrace the moments of silence that allow us to truly connect with others. Consider, for a moment, the last time you had a conversation that made you feel truly seen. It might have been with a friend, a family member, or even a colleague. Perhaps it was a conversation where you shared something deeply personal, something that had been on your mind for a while. Or maybe it was a conversation where you listened to someone else share their experiences, their fears, or their dreams. In that moment, you felt heard, understood, and connected. That kind of conversation is rare, but it is the kind of conversation that has the power to change us, to deepen our relationships, and to enrich our lives. So I ask you, when was the last time you had a conversation that made you truly feel seen? When was the last time you engaged in a dialogue that challenged you, made you reflect, or helped you grow in some way? These moments are precious, and they are worth seeking out. By embracing the courage to engage in deeper, more meaningful conversations, we could transform not only our relationships, but our entire approach to life. We have the power to create a world where true connection is the norm, where conversations go beyond the surface, and where authenticity is valued above all else. So, there you have it, why authentic conversations are essential for true human connection, and how the fear of depth, the discomfort of vulnerability, and our societal norms have kept us from experiencing real, transformative exchanges. We've explored how Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy calls on us to reject the easy, shallow conversations and embrace the courage to engage with each other on a much deeper level. It's not easy, it's not comfortable, but it's what brings us closer to the truth, to each other, and to our own personal growth. Now, the question I leave you with is, when was the last time you had a conversation that truly made you feel seen, heard, and understood? I encourage you to seek out those moments. Start asking the hard questions. Start embracing silence. Start listening not just for words, but for the emotions, for the stories, for the truths behind those words. In doing so, you'll find yourself more connected, more fulfilled, and more alive. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share it, and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support means the world to me and helps this channel continue to grow. And if you're feeling inspired and want to show even more love, hit that super thanks button to help keep the content flowing. Every little bit helps, and I appreciate it more than words can express. Thank you so much for watching. Keep seeking depth in your conversations, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep those meaningful conversations going, and let's start connecting in ways that really matter.